Hey racers, welcome to Overdrive Motorsports. Today we're talking Rotax Max, and we've got a sample engine here brought in by a customer just for normal refresh. This guy's a hobbyist, so he tries to get as many miles out of the engine as possible, and he doesn't race. So what do we do different on an engine like this, and why does this guy even need to get it serviced? So first thing, we're taking a look at the spark plug. On the Rotax, sometimes the smallest of issues could cause you major performance issues or even non-start issues. So if I take the spark plug out and I start unscrewing the top, I went about a half a turn and the top fell out. One of the good upgrades on the new Rotaxes is the plug with a solid top, and there's a positive fit plug cap now too that's available. So I highly recommend that. If I start to tear the top end apart, basically this guy was complaining about no compression. He was turning it over with the starter and it would just turn over freely. So I pull the top end apart just to see what's going on. And at first glance, I could see there's a lot of the coating worn off the front and the back of the piston. Top of the piston is caked with carbon, which isn't an issue, but his compression problem was called blow-by. So the ring is no longer seating to the cylinder wall, and you can see that there's black all the way down almost to the piston pin hole, but like 20 mil worth. On a good used piston, let's say that's like a 10-hour piston, you can see blow-by maybe 5 or 10 mil down, and the coating is still fairly intact, maybe a little shiny spot down here. And then as comparison, a new piston, perfect coating, and of course no blow-by because it hasn't run yet, no carbon either. So on this engine, we're going to inspect the bottom end. This one, it's got the old style conrod, which is brown. We check the slop. Obviously, we're going to give the option to the customer of replacing the connecting rod and see if he wants to go that way. But on some of these weekend warriors that just want to pound 40, 50 hours a year, they just usually go till failure. Next, I'm going to inspect this balance shaft. So I pull all the balance shaft cover bolts out. There's one blind hole here that is to check the oil level, so we don't need to take that one out. And you can see these two bosses here stick out further than any of the other bolts. So these two require longer bolts. If I pull off the balance shaft cover, see some gears back here. We've got an idle gear that runs off the crankshaft. This idle gear turns the water pump at a slower speed, so that gets the water flowing through the engine. I could pull that guy off of there. On the shaft here, I could check it for slop. It's pretty good, not too much slop. Water pump still turns, looks good. If I go in here, grab the gear, and give it a little bit of a shake, it still seems like it's quite firm on the spline. So these gears are in good shape and ready for another season of use. So I'd say this guy, I could give him a new gasket, wipe out any of the tar out of the bottom, and make sure we put a fresh bit of oil in the top. We run 75 mil of oil in there. It recommends 100 mil in the Rotax manual. You'll see that the first 25 usually spill out the breather. And then that's going to be about it to service this Rotax. This guy's going to be ready for another year of just pounding away on test and tune nights, chasing his buddies around the track, and eventually, hopefully he joins us, get an Evo kit on this thing, or upgrade his entire machine. If we spin the engine around, now we see the clutch side. I can put a stopper tool in the top corner of the flywheel, break this guy loose. So all I'm checking to see is the condition of the clutch, if any of the parts need to be replaced. Sometimes the drum, the clutch, this is called the actual clutch, the laser cut disc, which flexes out and drives the engine. Or the bearing even, if the needle bearing's starting to be worn. This is definitely an item that needs to be lubricated. So we always put like a pea-sized dab of grease on there. Just the smallest dab like that. This operation needs to be done maximum every 4 or 5 days of use. So if I'm looking at the clutch here, you can see this one's got a nice taper the whole way around. So this clutch actually looks brand new. A used clutch, which is terribly worn, like this one, has a lip on the back side. You can hardly see the taper on the corner. You can see a good taper here at the start, so it's got big wear for the second half. This is also a tech item for those that are racing on the Rotax Max Challenge. 24.2 millimeter is the thinnest you're looking for there. And here we're at 2410, 2409. So this one would be a DQ in a national competition race. I'll measure the brand new one just to see where we're at. $24.75, so a lot of life left in the brand new one. Depending on the style of driver you are, this should last multiple years. A driver who drives with 2 feet, which is to say leaves the foot on the gas while they're braking, they're going to go through clutch discs more often, and sometimes clutch drums. Clutch drums might have a crack in them. This one looks good, just abused. So what I typically do is wipe it out with some brake clean. There's also a new style clutch drum. You can see here that's reinforced. It's got an extra lip on the side, so to not let the clutch drum crack as easily when expanding. This one, however, is an example of one that's cracked. You can see a crack all the way through the bottom here. So sometimes bumpy racetrack or 2-foot driving, like I mentioned. On this nut, I like to use just a little bit of blue Loctite. If you service it daily, you don't need the Loctite on there. But if you're a weekend warrior that only looks at it when there's a problem, the smallest dab of blue Loctite is nice. In the Rotax manual, if you convert the Newton meters to foot-pounds, they call for 30 or 40 foot-pounds on here. I only like to see very little torque, like 20 foot-pounds. This little tip of the crankshaft is easy to snap off. So that's something to keep in mind, is to overrule the Rotax manual on that torque. Pull out the locking tool. If you leave the locking tool in and try to start the engine, the starter will actually burn out, or it could possibly catch on fire. So that's the quick engine service on the Rotax Weekend Warrior engine. Thanks for staying tuned to the Rotax Overdrive channel. Please click subscribe and make sure to turn on your notifications for more videos. Take care.